Hello and welcome to Gut Goddess Talks, a podcast where your gut has the stage. And yes, she has been talking, she has been telling you what's good for you. You just have to listen. My name is Rafaela. I am the founder of Gut Goddess, and I am on this podcast with several amazing guests who either have been through gut issues, they have had diagnosis, or they are still maybe in the dark trying to figure out, but they are doing their homework. They're on this journey to figure out what can they do to get better. Is it the foods that we eat? Is it the stress that we're in? How can we self-regulate while still, living a life that we want to lead? So join me for amazing and super insightful, vulnerable talks with guests from all over the world. We are going to be channeling into those topics that are so difficult to talk about and that are usually such a taboo. Not on Gut Goddess Talks. We talk about everything because yes, your gut is talking and we're here to listen. So join me for another episode of Gut Goddess Talks right now. Welcome, Nicole, to the Gut Goddess Talks. This is a new podcast of Gut Goddess, which is here to talk about our guts, our relationship with our guts, and what us different women have been through in our understanding journey of ourselves, of knowing actually what foods love us back and which ones don't, and what is our relationship to food. I'm super happy to have you here, but I want to hear from you. Can you tell us who you are, and if you would summarize your relationship with your inner gut goddess, what would it be like?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I am Nicole. I'm a certified integrative health coach, and I specialize in supporting women using a very personalized whole body approach when it comes to healing. I'm extremely passionate about the nervous system, neuroplasticity, nutrition, sleep, and of course the gut microbiome, and pretty much anything that turns on our body's natural ability to heal. So that's what I focus on, and that's really come from my own personal experience. When you ask, what does that gut goddess in me look like right now? I mean, it's completely evolved over the past, especially 4 years. I've gone through my own wild and beautiful healing journey, and the root of it really came down to a lot of gut dysbiosis, which is that overgrowth of the not so good bacteria and less of the good stuff that we want to turn on those good chemicals and healing. So now I'm in an amazing place, which is why I'm inspired to help other women support in their healing, because the gut really is the core of our health and our well-being and our vitality. So I'm extremely passionate about it.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I love that you say that it was a beautiful journey, because I bet it was a hard journey. And also sometimes we feel so alone in those journeys. Myself having celiac disease and I was the first one in my family to learn about it, and in my circles also. So you're just like, what's happening? I don't understand. But afterwards, when we look back, okay, I've been through these things. Now I understand myself so much better. And it's just beautiful to realize that. So thank you for coming here today and also being open to share your story. If we look back at the beginning, how were you when you were maybe in the early days, maybe as a child, as a teenager, and your relationship to the gut and to food in general?
Yeah, I've really spent some time now that I've kind of gone through this healing journey, going back and going, well, when did this start? I know as a child I had a very, quote, normal childhood. I ate everything. But looking back, I can see how sugar really impacted me. And I see that now with my own family, with my daughter. I can watch when, she has too much refined sugar, or even as a child seeing kind of those blood sugar spikes. And I do know that does impact the gut and impacted me as a child. But I think I really saw issues for the first time in high school. And I can correlate it actually to a T with a lot of stress that was happening at that same time. I think I was a senior in high school, and I was captain of the cross-country team, senior class president, trying to get into a good university. I was the oldest of two younger brothers, always playing like the third parent role in the household. And I remember I just started developing severe, I didn't know it at the time, it was IBS. And, you know, when you're 17, you're very embarrassed easily of anything that feels, you know, it's very taboo to have the bloating. Or I remember like having noises in my stomach during class and being so ashamed and embarrassed. And a lot of that now I can see back and look, that was contributed to stress. And I remember really trying to fix it, seeing all these different doctors and, you know, trying to control it through, at the time, I remember like this medication I can't remember the name of, and it nothing helped. You know what actually helped was when I left and went to college and like stopped being such a perfectionist and just kind of got away from, I had an amazing family and an amazing parents in childhood, but getting away and being on my own and no longer being, you know, responsible for so many things, that now I could finally be really focused on my own life. And yeah, I really, that it went away until the next kind of big life-changing moment, which is when I really discovered a lot more severity in my gut. Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
Wow, that is a lot. And as a teenager, I can completely imagine and also relate to all those inner voices we have. And there's so much in play when we have the friends groups and we want to do well. And it's just so much happening. And then if our bodies doesn't want to, you know, collaborate, it's just what's going on. So IBS, what is it? Can you also explain the term for us? What it means and what for you it meant?
Absolutely. IBS stands for irritable bowel syndrome. And what was showing up for me back then was a lot of bloating and sharp pains in my stomach, angst, like this rumination of worry. And now I understand, you know, the gut-brain axis and the correlation, but I would ruminate on this constant fear of having gut problems, having to run to the bathroom or not being able to go to the bathroom. And it's interesting now, you know, so many years later, that's not something I would worry about as much. That's not like the shame that would embarrass me. But back then, at like 17, it was all consuming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you find out? Did you understand it was IBS? Did you get a diagnosis? Or how was that moment of discovery for you?
So we discovered it through working with a few different doctors. At this time, I was living in the Bay Area, San Francisco in the United States. And I remember, you know, my parents were really trying to support me because it was causing probably more emotional distress than physical distress. And the physical distress was there, like I mentioned, through those symptoms. But really, it was through a doctor telling me after maybe 3 different visits, and it didn't feel really even validating because there was not much they could do. It was just like, you have IBS and it's something that we don't know a whole lot about, and you can manage it with these little blue pills. Again, I can't remember the name of them, but I don't remember them doing anything to help. What helped was eliminating the stress.
Wow.
And was getting my body into a state of that parasympathetic rest and digest, which I didn't know back then. But now when I look back and look at the connections and the dots, I can see, okay, my body finally felt safe when I went away, when I went to college, when I stopped being this perfectionist.
Was that a friends group that you were in? Or was that context of school that was so stressful to you? And when you get to start new, I imagine going to college, and that is just like such a relief.
Yeah, I think for me, I actually grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and I moved to the Bay Area when I was 13. And I went to a new middle school and had to develop new friends. And I was only there for a couple years until then I went to high school. And so I was constantly having to kind of change and evolve and figure out who am I and who do I want to be. I mean, there's this huge pressure, I think, everywhere in the world, not just in the U.S., of getting into the good school. And, you know, you have to have all the acclimates of the grades and the extracurricular activities. And I think it was just a whole combination of having to be so perfect and on all the time that it literally created contraction in my body, which showed up in the gut. And now that I've like studied this work and I do this work in my profession, trauma, big T, small t, or, nervous system dysregulation or emotions that are stored in the body can show up in different ways. For some people, it's a headache. For others, it's back pain. For others, it's like, for me, it was in my gut.
So do you think that the IBS came from the stress? So the stress was there first and then it started developing because as a result, as a response to that? Do you think that's what was happening?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a lot like the chicken and the egg, and it's so cyclical, and you hear a lot of people talking about this gut brain and which is first. I think sometimes I step back a lot and I think, well, which one does carry more weight? And I oftentimes come back to them being so even, right? Where I think it was a combination. I think the stress really was the tipping point, but I do know I was on antibiotics a bit as a child, and I think some of us are predisposed. I think now I know I have a very severe intolerance towards wheat, and I was eating a lot of wheat as a child. So I think that played a role in maybe making me susceptible with inflammation and susceptible to being more prone to that. But I think stress and not knowing how to manage stress, which most people aren't taught how to sit with their emotions and regulate their nervous systems.
Absolutely not to this day, right? So imagine like a 17-year-old. But so you noticed that the stress changed and that had a result in your body and inflammation just released or went down. But did you understand already that, those things are correlated? Because I remember myself at the time, I just didn't have the self-awareness of connecting one thing to the other and also thinking our body is a holistic being and all these things interconnect. How was the realization for you? And how did you start managing stress from there on or later in life?
Yeah, I wish I could say it was something so profound. That came more in the second big part of my journey in my mid-30s. But when I was in high school, I do remember like really pausing and going, wow, like my stomach feels so much calmer. And I'm actually like eating more things like cookies and I was a student, so I was eating a lot of processed foods, which aren't great and can lead to IBS and gut dysbiosis. But it was something that made me pause quite often and go, I feel so much better. I wonder if a lot of this, the root was stress. And then I was just a really happy college kid, like going through 4 years of traveling and studying and but yeah, I now looking back, I can really see that correlation.
And how was your relationship to food back then in school and later? And then you have a wheat. Is it an allergy or what did you have again?
It's an intolerance.
It's an intolerance. So please explain that to us.
Yeah. So with the intolerance, and it's interesting because there are so many different ways to test, and I've done a handful of different types of food intolerance tests. And what I also tell my clients now too is the intolerances can change, right? And when our nervous system is in a place of rest and digest and we're healing that, like intolerances can also change. It can change with our gut microbiome. It can even change with pregnancy. So I think it's so interesting how, for me, this intolerance is something I try to manage. I'm not a perfectionist with like completely eliminating wheat, but I do find it's like a bucket. So I'll have a little bit on special occasions, or there'll be chapters where I'm having more of it, and I can feel that inflammation through my body just having more of like a response of, it's not a full-on allergy, but it's just something where I can feel, my gut starts to feel more inflamed. And I'm a very sensitive person physically. And so I can start to feel, okay, I've got a little bit more fog in my brain. My mood becomes a little bit more low. And it's fun now that I've gone through school and I study this work. I understand and I can observe it more like a meditation and go, all right, like our serotonin is created in the gut. What is it, like 90 to 95%? That balances our mood and our appetite and the dopamine, the reward, the task, the motivation, even GABA, that calming neurotransmitter. So I look at it all now with a lot of self-compassion and love. And
Yes.
sometimes I'm like, I'm going to have the pizza. I'm on vacation. I'm going to indulge. But there's this compassion and also this bucket of, okay, well, I had the pizza tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to be a little bit more mindful with being more gentle on what I'm eating. And so it's not restriction. I've been through a lot of restriction in the past in my healing journey when I was really, really sick about 4 years ago.
Oh,
so,
no.
Yeah, so that's that's really the main chapter of why I went into this work to become an integrative health coach was through that dark night of the storm, people will call it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. How was that for you?
So it was the hardest chapter of my entire life and also the chapter I am most grateful for. So like that saying, pain becomes your purpose. And when you're not on the right direction, sometimes the universe just goes like, here we go. Let's move you right back to where you're supposed to be. So, yeah, I'll go into that. I actually haven't ever shared this part of my story publicly on a recording before, but I'm very open to it. And especially if it like gives anybody direction or inspiration or feels less lonely, because it is a huge part of why I do what I do now. So, yeah, about 4 years ago, it was 2021. I think everybody can remember. We were about a year and a half into the pandemic, and my daughter had just turned 1. I was living in Portland, Oregon, which is in the United States. And to like paint the picture for you, I was leading 13 retail stores as an area manager.
Wow.
I had 200 employees. I was also the president of a nonprofit board in the Pearl District Association. My husband was in grad school.
Oh, wow.
Our families were in different states.
And your daughter is 1.
And she was 1 at the time.
Wow.
And it was wild. Like, I was running on a hamster wheel. I thought it was somewhat normal, but I could see all the signs of like being in survival mode. And I mean, I would have these moments where I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling panic, and my stomach was always hurting. I felt tense, on edge, bloated, but I just kept saying like, just keep going. And when you're so busy, you almost don't even give yourself this space to feel bad.
Yes.
There's no like time. And it's interesting, as we just spoke about my story when I was younger. I mean, I'm sure everybody can see there's this correlation, right? Stress and burnout and just not feeling well. So about 4 years ago, my husband and I decided it was time for me to leave that job. We were both working remote, thankfully, because of the pandemic, and just to focus on Freya and her well-being. And so I did that, and as soon as I officially left that job, my whole world came crashing down. My body was finally able to go like, all right, let's pay attention now.
Oh, wow.
And I want to say overnight, but it was definitely a drip, drip, drip. But overnight, things accelerated, and I developed this anxiety that became all-consuming. I will never forget, it was like day 2. I was laying in bed, and my resting heart rate was 108, and we thought it was 2 a.m, and my husband, we thought something was wrong with my heart. So we picked up Freya, and we went into the car, and we went to the hospital, and they did an EKG, they checked my heart, they ran a bunch of tests, and they sent me home and said, come back tomorrow and speak to a doctor. And so I did that. I walked in, filled out a few questionnaires that felt very judgmental and had nothing to do with the whole body.
Oh.
And this doctor, and again, you don't want to blame the doctors. They're doing the best they can. They get 15 to 20 minutes, walks in and looks over.
Yeah.
It's so difficult, right? And looks over the sheets, and I've got tears streaming down my eyes. She says, you're a new mom. This is normal. And she prescribed me an antidepressant. And at this point in my life, like I barely even took cold medicine.
Oh, wow.
I've always been very into like the natural ways of living, even though I hadn't been taking care of myself at that period. And I did it. I just trusted the system. And in the weeks that followed, I developed severe insomnia.
You were also taking the pills then?
So I took it.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I said, okay, like I'm desperate.
Yeah.
And so I developed severe insomnia the weeks that followed. I dropped 15 pounds, which is about 7-8 kilograms.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course. In like 2 weeks.
Wow, that's a lot.
I had no appetite. I literally felt like my world was crashing, and I had this beautiful baby, and I just didn't know what was going on with my body. But I think I did know deep inside of me that there was something I needed to discover, that like I needed to find answers. You know, the doctor wasn't able to tell me anything except you're just a tired mom. And I knew it was more than that. I knew at my core. So then exactly 4 years ago, it was like almost Christmas, we had a trip planned to visit my family, my husband's family on the East Coast of the U.S. And so we'd already planned that we were going to be there for 6 weeks, and there was a family member that wasn't doing well, and we knew that it was his grandmother who we wanted to go spend time with, and so we went, and I just remember being so ashamed and terrified of like, how am I going to show up? And I just let that go, and I remember I told everyone, I said, I'm in a really rough place. This is where I'm at, and then we ended up, those 6 weeks turned into 6 months.
Wow.
Because we got stuck there because of the second wave of the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah.
And those 6 months were when I started reading everything I could get my hands on, from the microbiome to learning about fear and the brain and looping and panic and nutrition. And I went on this huge journey of just learning, and even spirituality and intuition and energetics, and just threw myself into learning. And then came back that summer to Portland, Oregon, and started working with a nutrition or a functional, like, naturopath, who, that's when the first onion really peeled, where we discovered I had a parasite.
Oh, really?
So that was the first onion of the gut. There's a lot of onions.
How did they discover that, if you don't mind
Yeah,
sharing?
so we did a stool test,
Yeah.
because I correlated with her. I said, I think it's something in my gut that is causing, because I had like 2 weeks where mentally I felt like really good, and my gut felt good. And then it went back to feeling awful again. And I called up this naturopath, and I said, I think it's in my gut. I think the gut is causing me to feel this constant feeling of like dread and angst and lowness. And I was starting to learn from my readings about like the gut and serotonin and dysbiosis and the vagus nerve, which are all the things that, you know, support that feeling of calm, and the neurotransmitters, which are the signals that signal to our brain well-being and focus and clarity and sleep. And so I went through that, and I felt like at the time, like, that's the solve. You know, if I heal this parasite, I'm going to be 100% again. Right?
This episode is brought to you by Gut Goddess. If you've ever sat at the dinner table doing silent negotiations with your stomach, this one's for you. Gut Goddess helps you finally understand what your body has been trying to tell you for years. Your patterns. Gut Goddess is here to help you make sense of the noise. Go to mygutgoddess.com, download the app today, and start making sense of your unique patterns. Turn insights into knowledge, and just find the foods that really love you back. That is mygutgoddess.com. And now, back to the show. And do you mind sharing, where did it come from? Is this can happen to anybody to have such a parasite? Is it a very rare thing, or?
Really good question. So from my understanding, parasites can be pretty common. There's so many different types of them. This particular one was a type of parasite that is a bit more intense, and most of the time it comes from like swimming in lakes or streams.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that I had caught it years prior, and it was showing up again, maybe through being susceptible. You know, we're so much more susceptible when we're not taking care of ourselves to everything.
Yes.
Right?
A cold and everything else.
Exactly. And, you know, so much of our immune system lives in our gut. So I think I was susceptible to, and all these things that I'll share. It was more than just a parasite, but the parasite definitely helped a bit move the needle. But then, we heal it and we test again, it's gone, and I still don't feel great. But at the same time, my husband had just received this opportunity to move to the Netherlands here in Amsterdam, which is where we are today, recording this podcast.
Yes.
And so we said, okay, let's do this. That summer, we sold our home, most of our belongings, and we moved here. And that was 3 years ago. And I simultaneously enrolled in school, in integrative health school, to study this work. And I said, okay, this has become my passion, finding answers and solving these mysteries. And so I'm going to go to school for it. And so as I was in school, the layer continued to unravel, and I met a friend who knew of a functional medicine doctor, which was divine timing because I had been studying about them. And for those that don't know, functional medicine doctors are doctors that really look at like systems biology. They're looking at you as the whole person. Many of them are actually even starting off like, what was your childhood like? How does trauma play a role in the way you show up? And why are you getting the headache in the first place? And everything is interconnected, right? And everything is about finding that root cause. And many times it's not one thing. It's a system of things that are causing the dysbiosis or the being out of balance. So this is like a story in and of itself. We found this little Dutch doctor in this little town called Udorp here in the Netherlands. And my husband would take off work and we would drive down there and I would meet with him in kind of broken English. And he quickly tested me and we found out that I had SIBO and a histamine intolerance. And so SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And a histamine intolerance is when your body is not breaking down histamine properly. So we have this enzyme in our body called DIO. And when we don't have enough of that or we're not processing things optimally, we are not breaking down histamine, which can turn in. There are so many symptoms, but for me, it really showed up neurologically.
Oh, really?
High histamine can impact, it can mimic adrenaline, panic, anxiety,
Explains so much now.
Well-being,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So there was the SIBO and the histamine, and oftentimes folks can develop a histamine intolerance when there is gut dysbiosis. So what was happening? So that made me feel really seen, and I now had more of a map of how to heal and how to get out of it.
And was that also just a stool test? And how did he came to this? Oh, let's test for these two things. Because that is the most difficult point, right? To have somebody who will, okay, I will test you for this, and then you can have an answer.
Yeah, he did a pretty comprehensive health history with me.
Oh, really?
And I helped guide him as well. I had been studying at the time, and I said, I actually think I had told him, I think it's SIBO. And my husband was in the room with me, and then when we got the tests back, I was like, yes, I knew it.
It's such a weird thing. I can also totally relate that we're happy that we're like, yes, I knew this was it. I don't like having it, but I'm so happy to find out.
You feel so affirmed, right? Because like you said earlier, it's a lonely journey.
Yeah.
It's hard, especially when you're dealing with food and what to eat and well-being. And what's really interesting, and I should note, is with histamine intolerances, so things that are high in histamine, when you have a histamine intolerance, you want to avoid at least or limit until you kind of get to the root problem and heal the root issue.
What are some of those foods?
Yes. So they are things like banana and spinach and tomatoes and dried fruit and chocolate and then the big one, fermented things. So kimchi, sauerkraut. So rewind a couple years prior, and actually the day of, I went in to the doctor's office with my new functional medicine doctor. I was eating those things, avocado toast with kimchi.
The healthy things, right?
100%.
A shake in the morning with banana and avocado, and then later on you eat some kimchi for lunch because it's so healthy for your gut bacteria. So it just proves that it's not like one recipe. Everybody should be doing this. Your body can also still react in different ways to different foods.
100%. And I think that's one of my biggest messages now with even my own clients is we are so bio-individual. And there's so much noise out there. There's so much noise of what we should or should not be doing. And it really comes down to really getting in tune with your body and giving it that space to get quiet. And one size doesn't fit all. And the size you're wearing with what you're eating today could be completely different after you heal or after, your microbiome changes. So that was really eye-opening of like, wow, these are foods that I have been probably some of the biggest staples of my diet that were actually making me quite sick.
Give us some guidance for people who maybe also just found out they have a histamine problem or SIBO. How did you replace those foods and or ingredients, and how did you change also your life? Because it's so much of our social life, living in a family with other people, and also our day-to-day life now has to be changed. And we need to be sometimes just so practical, right? We need to go through the day. We cannot spend the whole day like just planning meals and prepping stuff. So things also have to move quite quickly. How was it for you? Did you take a break? How was it?
Yeah, it was really difficult. So at this point too, I had become really thin. And I had never thought most of my 20s, I was always trying to lose a couple kilos, but I had never thought that I would get to a place where I became really quite self-conscious of how thin I was becoming. So I developed this fear of food around like what's going to make me sick, what's going to turn on the anxiety. And so your question is like, what would I tell somebody? Well, that's where, let me go back and I'll start with the foods I was eating. So SIBO and histamine are actually very contradicting of what you can eat. So it left me with very limited options. So things that are low in histamine, certain things tend to be like, for example, apples is an example. That's low in histamine, but that's high in something called like the FODMAP, which is like, so there was a lot of contradiction. So I had these lists that I printed out, and bless my husband, and actually bless my mother-in-law. I had just had foot surgery too when I got this diagnosis. And I was off my feet for 6 weeks. And so she came out here from the U.S. and she actually helped cook for me and take care of me. And I gave her these lists of like what I can and cannot eat. And it was so limited. Grilled chicken and certain quantities of different things. But I was very determined. I did that. I followed it. I took some, herbal supplements and did different things to help. And I really moved the needle on that, on healing the SIBO and on really lowering my histamine intolerance. And I would say around that same time, I was feeling better with my gut. This was about 2 years ago. So I had that was the big third peel of the onion. There was the parasite, then there was the SIBO and the histamine. And then I started feeling really dizzy and disoriented and like I was like drugged or something, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I just kept thinking like, what is going on with me? Like I can't catch a break. And my daughter started getting really sick and always coughing. And then 2 years ago we discovered that there was water damage in our Amsterdam home, and there was tons of black mold.
No way.
So I had just started healing my gut.
Yes.
And then had this. So we moved out. There's a happy ending to the story, I promise, which is where I hope that this gives a lot of hope to anyone listening that's struggling, is that we moved out of our home within days, and a low mold diet detox is very similar to low histamine. They have very similar guidelines.
Low mold diet.
Yeah.
So if you've been through a place that has mold, then you have to detox through food. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So and mold can affect people very differently, and we all detox differently. We all have predisposed genes. Also, when our nervous system is dysregulated, it also makes us more prone to having issues with that. And my daughter was also, showing a lot of symptoms, but for me, it was showing neurologically. And to answer your question about the food, like mold loves sugar. and fermented foods.
Oh,
A lot
wow.
very similar to histamine, loving foods, wine, alcohol, all the bread, all the good things. Loves it, feeds it. So we moved out and I did testing on that, and we discovered I had a really high amount of a neurotoxin, which is a toxin that impacts the brain.
No way.
So actually, when I received those results, I actually was excited because I felt really validated.
Again,
right?
yes.
Again, I was like, this is not just in my head. It's been,
Yes,
2.5 years of this wild healing journey as I'm
Yeah.
studying and building my coaching practice. So around this time, and this is what I'm about to share next, is really when everything clicked for me with healing and healing the gut. Is I was detoxing from the mold. It was, I think it was February of 2024, and I was still feeling terrible. And I'm a very spiritual person. I was going to sleep, and I had just prayed to the universe. I said, give me the answer and direction I need next. I know I was meant to go through all of this to help others, but I'm ready to
Yes.
feel good, really good. It's been a long journey.
Yeah.
And literally 2 days later, my husband and I, we had a babysitter, and we were walking at the De Pipe Albert Coot Market.
Yeah.
And there's this local little fish stand there that we love, and a very familiar, I wouldn't call him friend, but our local fish guy started chatting with us, and he had known that we had recently moved due to the mold, and he just asked, "How are you doing?" And this American behind me interrupted, and after we had finished ordering our fish, and said, "I'm sorry to eavesdrop, but I heard you were talking about dealing with mold toxicity. I can't help but share this thing that supported me in healing.
Yeah.
It's called DNRS,
What is that?
which is, it stands for Dynamic Neural Retraining System.
Oh, wow.
Dynamic Neural Retraining System. I always just think of it as DNRS. And it's literally changed my life. And the core of that work, it's not necessarily the DNRS, because there's other modalities since then that I have studied and now I teach. There's primal trust and journal speak, but really the core of that is that when our bodies are in fight or flight, you can do all the things. You can take the supplements and do the testing and discover you have the SIBO or the toxicity of mold. But if you can't get to the root of a limbic system, which is the part of the brain that gets stuck when we're in constant survival, if you can't heal that, which comes with, that could be a whole nother podcast, but I'll share, that's really around retraining the brain to get out of fight or flight through exercises and learning how to re-regulate the body to release all of those things that have been keeping the nervous system stuck.
Wow.
I committed to that. I took the program. I started studying neuroplasticity.
What was the program like? Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, it was I just threw myself into it because I just felt like this is the key. When you just know something is that missing link. I went home. I think I stayed up till 3 a.m. and I watched the first chapter. It's really this Annie Weber, I believe is her name, she's the founder, and she's walking you through all these different, the history of the limbic system, how it gets stuck, and how to heal it, and how to, really turn on healing. It's a whole program you do, and it does require daily exercises and daily work. It takes time for the brain. It's that pathway, right? That's that neuroplasticity part where we're creating new pathways in the brain. And it's in the same vein of, think of long COVID. There's so many people that the COVID went away, but they're still dealing with the symptoms because the body still thinks it's stuck in fight or flight. And this is healed. I mean, there are so many thousands of testimonials of people, with far greater symptoms than myself, people that couldn't get out of bed, that learn how to retrain their brain and how to turn on healing. And really, the amount of impact it can have on the gut and turning down inflammation and helping the body not be susceptible to parasites, to bacteria overgrowth, to all those different things. So now as a coach, the fundamental like work I do. And my mission is around, yes, I teach people about sleep optimization and nutrition and blood sugar balancing. But if we can't heal the nervous system and get to that fundamental root of getting the body into a state of healing, that's the foundation. And once you unlock that, it's like magic.
Amazing. How long did it take? How long were you in this program?
So I committed to it for 6 whole months. And then I really started seeing it's like there's this beautiful analogy of like healing, right? And you see like you go up 2 steps, you go down a step. You go up 6 steps, you go down 7, right? But you're constantly going up.
But slowly, yes.
But slowly. And that's something I really would stress too, is healing doesn't always happen overnight. And there are days though that for me, I would feel like I was getting better, and then I'd have like a setback and I was getting better, and I knew that was part of like learning. And it's like anything in life, you can apply that to starting a new business or, right, kind of sticking through. And I knew at my core that this was going to help me. And then there came a day where like it's like the blue sky in my brain just reappeared, and I felt I had better days than rough days. And my digestive system and the food fear went away. I was no longer, I still have symptoms here and there where if I eat too much gluten or dairy, or I'm not really nourishing my body or traveling too much, but I don't fear it anymore. It's like a gentle, compassionate observation of like, okay, let's fold in a little bit more mindfulness or self-care or, you know, fiber, whatever the body needs.
Did you test again for the toxicity levels? Is that something that can be tested also?
You can. It's really expensive to test, especially for mold. So I didn't. But what I go by these days is how do I feel, right? And we moved out of that house. And but mold toxicity is also something part of this whole brain retraining is, you know, oftentimes people that have been through mold, it's very similar to, think of like some folks that can't smell fragrances, or they get a headache, or so for somebody that's been through mold toxicity, oftentimes going back into a moldy environment will really trigger.
Oh, really?
Because it goes back to that limbic system in the brain. So retraining that also helps support keeping that at bay, because it's a combination of, you don't want to be living in a moldy environment, but you also don't want to be in constant panic, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I was just in Spain with my husband for 2 weeks, and there was like one of the Airbnbs we stayed at had mold. And did I panic and freak out? Absolutely not. I used my tools. You know, it's like one night. It's not the end of the world. Like, what's worse is getting into a state of fight or flight over this versus just accepting it at what it is. So.
And how is the relationship to food now? How is, if you don't mind sharing, the fear of food that you had? How did it feel like, and how did you slowly get better towards it? Yeah. And how is your relationship to food now?
Oh, so good.
Nice.
Like,
good.
Actually, on Thursday night, I was out at dinner with some girlfriends celebrating a birthday, and I was saying, like, my jeans are starting to feel really tight, and I never thought I would say again, like, how good it feels, right? Like, because after spending so many years being so thin, I was like so grateful for this ability to, I can eat anything I want now, and I observe it with that gentle compassion, because it doesn't turn on panic in my body. And a lot of that has come from this nervous system regulation. I don't get that. If anything, this anxiety has now become a superpower, as I find myself very often like really, really calm in so many circumstances that others would be like, I can't believe that's not stressing you out. Or so I think that has been really key is I still develop like anyone. If I am not treating my body with care and eating too many processed foods or on vacation, and I will feel bloated and I will feel that sense of discomfort, but it's nothing like it was before. I mean, before I couldn't eat onions and garlic because those are things that contribute to, that are things that when you're healing from SIBO, small intestinal overgrowth, there's certain foods, even healthy ones, that you want to stay away from while you're healing because they ferment easily in the small intestine. And then with the histamine things, I do eat now eggplant and tomatoes and chocolate, and I just do it all in moderation, right? I'm not going to have a big bowl of pasta sauce and wine and chocolate and aged cheese and kimchi in the same day, because I'm still very mindful of that. It does impact me, but I've healed a lot of the root cause, so I can tolerate those things once again.
Amazing. And that's such a beautiful message, especially for people who just got a diagnosis like those, right? Because we feel like, oh no, my whole life is ruined. How will I ever now go out, go on vacation, go to a restaurant, meet my friends at a restaurant? How can I ever do those things again? You will need the time for healing. And I think compassion towards ourselves is so important, and patience, and think, okay, my body has her own time and I will try this, I will try that, but really analyzing how are we feeling.
Yes.
And then, okay, it will come to a point that things can be different. It can be much better. And sometimes it's just this realization of, okay, which foods are good for me, which aren't good for me, and how do I live with that? That you feel much better not having that. For me is, okay, I really know that if I would be here eating with everybody, wouldn't be nice, yes. But I know that that is not good for me. I will feel miserable tomorrow and for 2 weeks. So that just gives me much more comfort of, I know myself, I understand myself, so I can be here also in peace without the suffering.
Absolutely. And I think there's something so beautiful about going through those chapters. They're difficult, they're hard, they feel isolating at times. But there's this like quiet whisper of a knowing and of yourself. When you go through these moments of healing, you become so close to yourself, right? You go through this chapter of really having to go inward. And in that isolation sometimes is when, I don't know, this connectiveness to our self, our higher self, whatever you want to call it, comes through. And that's why I say sometimes that this chapter was one of the best things to ever happen to me. I felt like I got to know myself better in 4 years than in like 30 years.
Yeah, we just don't listen. I was also in a state of inflammation because of celiac for 30 years. It took me 30 years to get a diagnosis. And I was just not listening to myself. And I've never really understood that actually we are in charge of that. Like nobody else is responsible for that. We are basically the sole responsible people for our own body and health. And that doesn't mean just taking a little tea or something for, just not catch a cold or something. No, really, how do we react to things? What's good for us? When should we be going to bed, for example? How many hours of sleep do we need? And not doing, everybody else is doing something else, so I should also be doing that. No, for you, how is it for you individually? That is so important, and taking that in our hands and research, understand things. Nobody will do that for you. And if we need a doctor, I've been misdiagnosed so many times also. It took me 3 years of going to places, and I have terrible back pain. I'm 27. This can't be it, right? And they just say, similar to your story, oh, just go to the physiotherapist and just watch out that your bag is not too heavy. But come on, then if I'm 27, how will it be when I'm older?
Exactly.
So finding the root cause, that's so beautiful what you said. Find the root cause, where it's coming from. I couldn't understand that so many symptoms I had were all correlated to celiac. And yeah, like the back pain, I was so stressed, and I was also a high achiever. So I was listening to your story and I was also feeling very seen, because for me, that now I understand the following. I think that inflammation in my body made me be so on edge that it was so much a survival instinct or a thing of, if I don't get it, or if I don't do it, or if I don't outperform, if I'm not the best one, it's almost like I'm going to die. There is no other way. So I was always pushing for all those things. And in a way, you could see, okay, then I did get things out of it, of course, because I was always being so much, putting so much effort on things. But on the other hand, my body was just suffering, and I could get no rest. So the moment that I found the root cause, celiac, just removed gluten from my diet and understood that my whole life had to change. It's not as simple as that because small traces trigger it. So it has to be very like consistent, and my social life would change. I think I was kind of lucky in a sense that that happened during COVID, at the very beginning of COVID. So I got the chance of just being at home and just, reevaluate my kitchen and the things that I'm doing. Nobody's going to restaurants anyways. So I had 3 years of being like that to then get better. And then suddenly, oh, now I can relax. It's not that I'm not ambitious anymore, but I now can be like, do I really want that? Or, is that what I really want? Or is that some kind of a voice that I'm hearing that I should be trying to get? And life just gets so much better. And also, life is not about achieving different things, but deciding for ourselves what makes us happy and what kind of impact do we want to have in the world. And it's not a race. So if it's not a race, we're living in every moment. So it changed completely for me. And now I understand all those things. I'm still learning because, yeah, what you mentioned about retraining, I think maybe that happened for me during COVID because I was completely secluded at my job. For me, it got less stressful at the time because now I wasn't traveling overseas, doing stuff, not organizing events or whatever. So it got less stressful. So maybe I didn't even know, but that was maybe a retraining that I got calmer at that time. I was healing physically, but also mentally. So it's, wild journeys that we go through.
It sounds like it like forced you to have to completely change through the just trajectory of
absolutely
the pandemic. Wow.
It did. It
What a
did.
story.
So now you had those lists of foods, you don't anymore, right? You just, how do you still is IBS gone for you? You don't have IBS anymore, or like you said, you have a sensitivity, and you also have the wheat intolerance you mentioned, so you do have to be mindful not to eat too much of those things. But is it gone? Is it something that people can be healed of completely?
I think so. I'm still a very sensitive girly, like I always am, and I think it's one of my superpowers.
Nice.
My body loves clean, good, whole foods, and I'm okay with that, But in terms of it being gone, I live a beautiful life now. Mentally, I feel fantastic, like so good that even sometimes, I have hard days, but I've noticed that I don't know, the past few days it's been really dreary. And the other day, heading to this friend's birthday, it was traffic and pouring, and I was leaving one of my clients, and I just felt happy. And I was using my tools, but not intentionally all day, right? Like when people would start talking negatively around me about things, I would just change the subject. Or when I would find myself going into a loop of, all the things that come up, the hundreds of thoughts, I just redirect them. But it wasn't conscious. It was just, and I consciously put on the great music in the traffic. And each time that I'd have to stop in traffic, I would just do breath work. And I just found wow, this is just who I am now, is these tools have become a part of me without having to think about it. And I say that in relation to the food. It's very similar where, I'm not perfect and I don't want to be perfect, but I do, we've talked a lot about the gut microbiome and the gut. I really do try to prioritize balancing my blood sugar and eating 3 healthy meals a day, and because doing that also keeps the body in a rest and digest, because if it knows, okay, I've got this next meal to look forward to, and I haven't dropped my blood sugar, which increases the stress hormone cortisol. So for me now, I can eat almost anything, but if I eat too much of I can eat anything. I can say that. I can eat anything, and I do, but I still try to limit wheat and dairy, and I also don't feel great with alcohol. So I'm in a chapter of my life where I'll drink it on occasion. I'll have a cocktail or some great wine.
Oh, I feel seen. Amazing.
I love it. It's like a new movement too. It's becoming
yeah, right.
It's not why I do it, but I feel so accepted in this world now of like,
Yeah,
okay, we can have a mocktail and just have just as much fun. I was out till midnight on Thursday with my girlfriends. I was the only one not drinking. I had just as much fun. I felt amazing on Friday morning when I woke up.
awesome.
So,
Good.
yeah. So in terms of food, though, but I try to listen to it. It doesn't love certain things, my body, and so I try to honor it and nourish it, right? But nourishment can also be delicious. My 5-year-old and I talk about this all the time of like, we can make food taste amazing. Dates and honey and herbs and spices and love and like all that when you cook into it, you can have delicious food. But I am not worried about the things like the low FODMAP and the onions and the apples. Yes, I have healed that 100%. And that food fear is really gone. So now for me, it's mostly just trying to eat whole foods that, like you said in the beginning, I loved you said that love me back. It reminds me of a book by Will Cole called Gut Feelings. And he talks a lot about that, like what loves you back.
Yeah.
And I think about that and I teach my clients that a lot of like, you can tell pretty quickly usually,
so true.
right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that didn't sit well. Or, man, every time I eat cashews, I don't feel great. So you start to listen. And I think sometimes that's more powerful than these intolerant tests you can take.
Yeah.
So.
And we're in denial. At least I was. And well, I think you were more like, I really want an answer. But I was also in denial for a while. So I was like, no, I don't have it. I have no problems. I have, I'm immune to all allergies or all reactions or everything. And it's also knowledge that people should have that first, of course, people with allergy or conditions are not picky. It's really serious. It's understanding your body, and even if it's a little bloating, that affects you. You can still live, but your quality of life can really drop, and it makes a difference. And we're also social beings, so you want to go somewhere and you want to wear something that you can't, and you're like, what's going on? And people may develop things, so always be alert of, okay, how do I feel now? Something that was great for you earlier, maybe not anymore, and just continuously listening to ourselves, not to have the fear, oh, I might develop something or something is bad for me. No, but just really understanding what is good for you, what is doing you well, what really loves you back. And accepting, oh, I will have this kind of a relationship with this kind of routines, with this kind of life, and develop it on the long run, because it just makes such a difference in life.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And hearing what you were like creating too, I remember, I think I told you when we first met, how like during the journey I was always like taking notes of like, okay, I ate this today and I ate this today, and is there a correlation, and is it when I eat these together? And I wish in that journey I'd had something that would like pull it all together.
Perfect, thank
and
you.
Like and be that second brain, instead of like the notes app and the paper that I was writing on, and trying to find the correlation. And that just gets you more stuck in that state of like stress. So I think what you're doing is so needed in this world of trying to get the right information.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. And thank you to our sponsor, Gut Goddess. Amazing.
Yes.
So looking at your journey, Nicole, everything that you've been through, and also this amazing positive attitude that you have, looking toward yourself and towards everything you went through with so much love and compassion, what is your message to somebody who is going through something maybe similar, but maybe not in terms of, okay, it is SIBO, it is IBS, or it is histamine, but maybe just of trying to figure out what is wrong or going on, how to also find themselves back and regulate their nervous system, their relationship to food. What is your message? What would you say to somebody like that?
Oh, like I want to put my hand on my heart, because if you're listening to this and you're going through that dark night of the soul, or you're really struggling, there is so much hope, and you will feel good again, whether it's physically or it's mentally. If your brain feels like those big clouds on a rainy day right now and it doesn't feel like there's hope. There is, I promise you. And you will get better. And I think my advice is that first and foremost, give yourself compassion. You're not broken. You know, your body is trying to speak to you. You need to slow down and give it that space to really listen. And I know that sounds vague, so let me get into more of like the advice I'd give is all of these symptoms, they're signals, they are signs. And when we can slow down, we can start to interpret them more. And one side of that may be that it's time to test, right? It's time to find a functional medicine doctor. You know, you can look them up online, you know, go to functional medicine doctors and you can kind of search through where you live and find somebody that can read some lab work and help give you some guidance on what you might be going through. If that is something that is not in your price point, I would recommend really starting to, like, honestly, with what you've created, really start to track what you're eating, what is causing the issues. Try to find your own roadmap through your own work of self-discovery and just getting in tune with what your body is signaling to you. And then I think most importantly is to really assess your life and where the stress, where it's leaking, your well-being, where the stress is coming into play, where it's, you know, putting your body out of a state of regulation. So getting your body into that, what we call parasympathetic state, that rest and digest. And if you're new to all of this, I would start with, you want to find a practice that works for you. It's bio-individual. So if someone says, like, you know, meditation may not be, it may be right for you right now, but maybe a walk in nature is better for where you're at. So meet yourself with where you're at, but do things and be consistent to signal to your body that it's safe. And I would really, if you want to actually move mountains and really, if you're somebody like how I was, where I'm like, I need to figure out like what's going on and I need to heal, I'll do anything to heal. I would say to enroll in one of these programs that will really teach you how to heal your nervous system. And my recommendations would be either DNRS or Primal Trust is a great one. They integrate a lot more of like somatics and nervous system regulation techniques along with brain retraining. And then there's Nicole Sachs' Journal Speak, which is really the fundamentals around these are, you know, taking your nervous system out of survival mode. And when your body starts to calm itself, you can teach your body that it's finally safe to heal. So the message I would share is like, this is, you can heal. Our bodies were designed to heal. We just have to put it into the place and give it the resources it needs to heal.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Wow. Thank you so much, Nicole. And you're also helping people to heal. So tell me a little bit more about where can people find you? How can people connect with you? You're based in Amsterdam. Do you have clients only here? So tell me more.
Yes, I have a couple different options. So you can find me online on Instagram at Coconut and Cacao. And then my website is www.coconutandcacao.com. You can also subscribe to my newsletter there. And right now I am at full capacity, but I am going to be taking on probably 1 or 2 more clients in the new year. So I've got one-on-one coaching programs where I have a 3-month program and a 6-month program where I offer individual sessions. And something exciting that I'm really passionate about, I'm working on for next year, I'll probably be launching it next end of summer, early fall, is just a whole program that integrates nervous system training, neuroplasticity, aligned with the core fundamentals of health that I work on, which is optimizing sleep, blood sugar balance, nutrition, creating kind of one big platform that supports kind of like the mind-gut-body connection, but for healing.
Perfect.
So that will be coming out most likely at the end of next summer.
Oh, that's amazing. Nicole, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, for being vulnerable, and really for the first time on camera and recorded, sharing your story. I'm so sure this will reach so many lives and people will feel seen and not alone. So different than how we were experiencing it ourselves. So thank you for this and for being at the Gut Goddess Talks podcast at its launch. I'm so excited. More episodes are coming, and I have amazing people just like yourself coming to the pod, and we're going to have this kind of honest discussion and honest, like, how was it for you? How was your individual journey to really, we're not alone, and I love the term you said today, bio-specific, bio-unique. That's us. We're really unique beings, and understanding ourselves, it's to be honest, our main job, and we can do this. We're not alone, and our bodies are made to heal. Also another key takeaway. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today's episode is supported by Gut Goddess. Gut Goddess helps you see real patterns behind what you eat and how you feel, so you can stop apologizing, girl, for your body and start really understanding it. Turn patterns into insights with Gut Goddess. Go today to mygutgoddess.com, download the app, and start understanding your own gut.